Hey y'all, it's Carolyn Bauerschlag with the Bauerschlag Group at Keller Williams out of Houston, Texas, bringing you part 4 of our investor series. If you've been following along, you've seen parts 1, 2, and 3, which talk about why you might consider real estate investment in the first place, the type of investment property that would be attractive. Part 3 talked about financing, and today we're covering attracting and screening the tenants that come through. For easy discussion, I've broken this up into 2 parts again. We're going to talk about condition and marketing of the property, and then flipping over into screening the tenants once those applications start to roll in. So let's get started. First off, I want to talk about a quick idea that we talk about in sales a lot, which is that like attracts like. What this means is that whatever you put out there, you would attract back to yourself. So if we list a property and it's clean and it's beautiful and properly presented, then you're likely to attract someone who would care for the property the way that you would. It's likely that someone would not only be interested in living that way, but be able to care for the property the way that you would want them to, right? So it's really important that we present the property as cleanly and professionally as possible. So some small considerations, we probably addressed these whenever we were purchasing the property that you were interested in. Things like flooring and paint and lighting. Those would be things that we embedded into the offer price when we were getting the deal done. Generally speaking, you want your paint to be clean and neutral. It doesn't have to be gray, it doesn't have to be a specific color or a bright white, but you want it to be neutral. With your flooring, we try to keep carpet out of the house as much as possible for 2 reasons. One is that carpet holds smell and stains. The other is that it's not all that durable and you may have to replace it, right? So your laminate or your tile do really well over time, and buyers like it, or tenants like it. Buyers and tenants really find it attractive. So those are things to consider doing before you get a tenant in there. You don't have to do it all at once, but it is something to put in your back pocket. Some easier things, or some of the lower hanging fruit, is to consider upgrading your lighting, or some of the softer touches in your home, like cabinet pulls. It's all of those soft little decorator details that say, hey, I care about this property. Isn't this a beautiful place to live? And wouldn't you like to live here too? Right? So one of the easy things that we did when we bought our townhome was we cruised the end caps of Lowe's and Home Depot, found the clearance section for lighting. So we put in this really pretty, I think it was like a 20-inch drum shade on a chrome pendant. We swapped out what we jokingly called the prison light fixture that kind of looked like this little pan on a chain drop in the townhome. For this beautiful light fixture, and we got comments from prospective applicants about it. We swapped out some bathroom lighting, and then we added those cabinet pulls, which helped not only preserve the cabinets, but again, it added a little decorator detail that made it look like it was a loved-on property, right? So a couple $100 invested into making some small changes really elevate the overall look of your home, which then in turn attracts more people to that property. Some other things to consider are including your washer, dryer, and fridge into that lease. Hopefully we had the opportunity to negotiate that on the front end. If we didn't, you might find them aftermarket or on sale around those major holidays. When we include the washer, dryer, and fridge into the lease, you can increase the rent. Your tenant usually, I would say, is not necessarily dragging around a refrigerator with them. They don't travel so well. They may have that washer, dryer, but those are just some things to consider. Another thing that I like to encourage people to consider marketing their property with is lawn care. This is for 2 reasons. 1, not everyone's standard for lawn care is as high as yours. And 2, if lawn care is left undone, like if you're not watering your yard, not only does the grass die, but that's really bad for your foundation. So there could be some deferred maintenance issues that could end up costing you a lot of money, not only in the lawn itself, but in potential repairs on the home. So you can take that off of the tenant's plate and potentially increase the rents just a little bit too. Now you can't increase it a whole terrible ton, but the totality of the property features and benefits is something that we consider when we select that lease price. Other things to consider is getting professional photography done. If you're working with me, that's a non-negotiable. There is not a chance that I'm going to list your property with some iPhone photos. It's just poor form. You've got one shot out the gate to attract as many people as possible. And these photos really set the tone and the stage for attracting as many people as you can. So one of my pet peeves is seeing someone's belly through the selfie that they took in a bathroom mirror, or if they took a picture of the bathroom and you can see straight into the toilet. I don't want to see your toilet. I also don't want to see crooked photos or bad lighting, because all of that says I didn't care enough about this property to pay the $125 to get this done the right way. So hire a professional and we'll take care of that part for you. The other thing that I like to do for my listings on sellers and landlords alike is to add as many words into the listing description and the photo captions as possible. We lovingly joke that we get like $1 per word, so we add the adjectives. So we talk about the decorator paint and the beautiful stained espresso colored floors, the vaulted ceilings, the crown molding, the master suite where you can relax and unwind. So you really want to paint a picture in the tenant's mind about what it would be like to live in this property. So you've got beautiful photos, you've got features and benefits, and now you've got a narrative for what it would be like for that person to live in your home. So those things really help make for a beautiful presentation. Next up, I always like to consider, or at least encourage my landlords to consider, pets being included into the lease on a case-by-case basis. Apartments can be a little bit hard on tenants long-term. With pets, they charge pets monthly rent, and then the deposits can be kind of fat. So if you conceptualize it, someone may want a yard not only for their own use and enjoyment, but maybe for a pet. So those things are strong considerations with landlords, especially amongst the millennial contingent, myself included, where they think their pet is their baby, right? So if you make an assumption that people with pets will destroy your home, you may in fact miss out on a tenant that would care for it because that pet is their child, right? So those are things to consider as well. The last thing that I like to put in your back pocket is the idea that pricing is critically important. A lot of times people get scared off and they say, oh my gosh, we won't be able to find a tenant quickly and this house is going to sit. The house only really sits if you took lazy photos, you didn't market it right, and then you priced it wrong, right? So it's very easy for us to determine what the target lease price is going to be for the features and benefits that you're adding to this home. Like I mentioned briefly before, if you included washer, dryer, and fridge in your lease, that tends to put you on the higher side of the comps, maybe by like $25 a month. If you added lawn care, it's hard to sit there and say it's an additional $100 a month. You're not going to get that. But you would probably get at least another bump in your rent, right? So if the leasing market says that they'll tolerate rents from $1,600 to $1,700 and you hang your property out for $1,800, you're not moving. But if you put it on the top end of the budget or of the comps at $1,700, it's likely that your property would move very quickly. So what I like to always push back on with my landlords is that if we are wrong and we don't have showings or applicants within the first couple of weeks, we're more than $50 wrong. So if we have to make a price adjustment, we're not making a $25 adjustment. We're going to move in a direction that really gets people to apply and apply quickly. All right, so at a high level overview, the purpose of making these improvements to the property before you list and getting these photos done professionally is so that we can attract as many people as possible to fill out a lease application so that you can have the pick of the litter and run as many people through the screening process as you would like, right? The last thing I want to touch on just briefly is that those photos that we get on the front end should be something that you can recycle year after year, provided you don't make significant changes to the home. So that I cannot overstate the importance of making sure that we present your property professionally. So if we flip the discussion over into screening, the first thing that I want to point out is that we are subject to fair housing laws. Fair housing laws say that we can't discriminate on race, religion, sex, familial status, disability. It's not a thing. But what we can do is filter for behavior, right? And behavior is revealed through histories. And those histories that we're looking at are going to be employment, credit, criminal, and eviction. Those are the primary things, right? So let's chat. If we've done our job properly, then we get multiple lease applications and we can look at a standardized Texas Association of Realtors 4-page lease application, which talks about their gross monthly income, any cars that they're going to have on the property, the number of people they expect to occupy, the last residences that they had, the names of the landlords from those residences, their employer. It has their supervisor's number. It also has whether they're going to smoke on the property, which is going to be a hard no, whether or not they'll maintain renter's insurance, which I would suggest that you require, and if they have a criminal history, right? So as the listing agent, what I'm looking for is 2 months of pay stubs, your driver's license, I'm looking to speak with your previous landlord. I'm also looking at your car note. So we look at gross income, and you've probably heard people say you want their income to be at least 3 times the monthly rent. I would challenge that only slightly with, let's look at their tax affected income and then stack it against any recurring obligation, because people need places to live and they need a car to drive. So if we don't have enough available income to pay for your recurring obligations, that's probably going to be an issue, right? So then we're going to do employment verification. We don't want someone to have falsified any kind of pay stub, and we want to make sure that they're actually employed. So we've seen people that were social media influencers. We've seen people that had untraceable $5,000 monthly income. I'm not super into that. You want to be able to see where this money is actually coming from, right? So the employment verification is an important part of this as well. When we look at that lease application, we're also looking at the number of occupants that want to be in that home. If you've got a 3-bed, 2-bath space and you've got an application where there's going to be 8 people in that home, I would really question with whether or not they can actually utilize the space in a way that wouldn't be damaging or hard on them, but also damaging to the property. You want to look at the number of cars. If you've got enough spaces for 2 cars in the garage and 2 cars in the driveway, and they say they've got 5 cars, one of those cars is going to be in the street, or it's going to be in your yard, or it's going to be on the curb, and that's going to be a problem because it's going to damage your property, or it's going to be an HOA violation, which you will be the one who has to hear about that and deal with it, right? So the idea is that we're looking at the holistic picture of the person that wants to live in your home, and we want to understand that when we talk to their old landlords, they've made their payments timely, that they didn't cause a whole terrible ton of issue for the landlord with multiple calls for service. That they didn't leave the property in disrepair whenever they moved out, right? So we're painting a picture, and we want to see that that person's going to care for the property again the way that you would. Once the person makes it through the initial screen, what we like to do is a background check. We've got a tool called My Smart Move, which is powered by TransUnion. That's one of the credit bureaus, and what we do is we initiate the background check, and the tenant goes on and they pay for the application fee. They provide their driver's license and their social security number, which yields then reports from TransUnion for their criminal, credit, and eviction histories. So I would say poor credit is more or less par for the course. People may be trying to improve their credit by leasing. They may not qualify for a purchase quite yet. They may have gone through a bad divorce or a recent struggle. But what we don't want to see is abuse of credit. So I don't want to see credit lines that have been shut down, bad debt write-offs, or people that are habitually making 30, 60, 90-day late payments, because they're probably not going to pay you on time as well. So bad credit, not necessarily an issue, but the habits are what we're trying to establish, right? Next up is criminal history. People make mistakes. They have things that happen. They may have speeding tickets that were not so great. They may have DUIs in their past. They may have minors in possession. They may have possession charges. Those things may be old. Again, we're looking for habits. So if you see lots of jail time, or if you see lots of court orders, that may be indicative of the habits. Getting out of jail or court issues are expensive, so that's another consideration. Hard no's for denials that I've seen have been anything related to fraud, any kind of check kiting or money laundering. That's going to be a hard no. Any kind of felonies that really calls into question what you might be dealing with. Domestic violence is a reason for people to break their lease. So if you're seeing a habit then of domestic violence, that would also be a good reason to maybe pump the brakes. Eviction histories, we don't see these too terribly often, but if you see someone that has been evicted, it might be a consideration for you to say, I don't feel so good about proceeding with this if another landlord has had to give you the boot, right? In the verification process, one of the things that we like to do with landlords is go 2 landlords deep. If they've leased multiple places, we want to see that there was continuity, that they weren't just out within 3 or 4 months on every lease. But we want to pick up the phone and talk to not one landlord, but 2, if possible. That one landlord might just be trying to get rid of them. They say, yeah, they're great, bye, your problem now. But the second landlord might tell you a little bit more, right? So you want to do as much due diligence as you can. And all of that leads to you being in the driver's seat for being able to pick a tenant that would not only pay you on time, but care for the property the way in which you'd want it to be cared for. So next week, we're going to talk about best practices and frequently asked questions. As always, if you have any thoughts that come up, just drop them in the comments below. I've really enjoyed getting to read all your questions and chat with y'all over these last few weeks. So keep them coming. Looking forward to it.